Hello, everybody, and we are live for the View from the Top. And what an exciting show we've got lined up for you today. Transforming mobility the Adobe way. Hi, I see Michael Quigley's in the house. In fact, we've got loads of you, got well over 100 people already in the house, and we're just seconds into the show. And I'm not surprised at all, because it's such an important show for you today. We're going to be talking about how you can transform your mobility program with a live case study with Tricia Sirois from Adobe, but we've also got changes to the non-dom status in the UK, and we've also got, we're going to be talking about leisure or bleisure, and how you mix leisure with business, business travel from an immigration perspective. Some really important stuff today, but you know how it works, everybody. Please join in the conversation. Tell us who you are, where you are. I can see we've got Harvey here, who's from ICANN in Swindon. We got Daniel's come in. Wow, that was a nice production video, he said. We've got Jen backstage. She'll be joining us from Nomadic. We've got loads of people coming in from all over the world. We've got Billy Ho, and have we got Stinky Tofu with you, Billy? Great to see you. Anyway, many of you, of course, will want your credits. And you can get credits from ERC. You've got your GMS and your CRP credits there. They're there. Or courtesy of our good friends at Rocket Mortgage, we've got your HRCI and your SHRM credits. So if you want those credits, then please just take a photo of the page or write it down or whatever you want to do. Screenshot it, but just get the number. Daniel is in Los Angeles, California. Good to see you, Daniel. We've got Justin coming in from Compass Furnished Apartments in Boston. I'll tell you, we've got over 200 people now live watching us. So you know what? I better move on and get into the subject. So let me just tell you about what we got next week. Next week, this is a really important subject. Now, it may not necessarily be the most exciting subject in the world, but it's certainly one of the most important. It's comp accumulation and payroll reporting, which people spend hours and hours and hours, and they spend small fortunes trying to do their comp accumulation and their payroll reporting. Next week, I'm so excited to say that we're going to be launching a solution that uses technology to do the comp accumulation, the payroll reporting, and does it at no additional cost whatsoever. So if you've been spending zillions on external costs, or you've been spending hundreds of hours, then you need to tune in and find out about a solution that can do all that using technology at no additional cost. So anyway, that's all for next week. What about this week? What's been going on in the last 7 days in the wonderful world of global mobility? Well, let's find out what the breaking news is for this week. So there we are. What about that for some exciting news? We've got all the people there who've been promoted, which is really exciting. We've got people who've gained new jobs. We've got lots of job opportunities. And I see we've got some people from our great friends at Air Inc. here. I see Pat Jurgens is in the audience. I think others are. Congratulations to everybody at Air Inc. on your 70th birthday. How about that? That's wonderful, wonderful news. So we're going to move on. Congratulations to everybody. As Harvey said, happy 70th. Yeah, big shout out. Let's hear it for Air Inc. Big congratulations to Air Inc. on their 70th birthday. So lots of applause going up there. We're now going to move on to talk about immigration. Now, normally, of course, we have Julia Onslow-Cole with us. Today, she can't be because Julia, being Julia, of course, is mid-air traveling somewhere. She always seems to be traveling every week somewhere else. But I'm super excited. We have in her place the wonderful Jen Fakelman, who's going to be talking from Fragment Nomadic, who's going to be talking about bleisure or pleasure, or call it what you will. So everybody, it's her first time on the show, so you know how it works, everybody. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome onto our stage the wonderful Jen Fakelman. Hey, Jen, how are you doing?
Hi, Brian. I'm well. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, Jen. So tell us, first of all, what is Fragment Nomadic? Some people may not know it. And then talk to us about bleisure or pleasure or whatever we're going to call it this week.
Sure. So Nomadic is Fragment's solution for the short-term business traveler. We're utilizing technology and expert guidance to help business travelers ensure that they're compliant with immigration rules and to help them to get the documents that they need to travel.
Cool. Okay, so tell us more.
Yeah, so I'm actually coming to you today from a pleasure trip myself. I'm here in sunny Barcelona, which is wonderful. And pleasure really is the mixture of business and leisure travel, right? And when your destination is as beautiful as Barcelona, of course, it's a no-brainer to want to add some additional days to sightsee, to explore. And that's exactly what I will be doing at the end of this week after my obligations to my clients and partners here in Barcelona. I'll be joining my friend for a road trip around Andalusia.
So basically, pleasure is taking a business trip and turning it into a bit of fun, or is taking a vacation and ruining it with a bit of business.
Exactly. I'm hoping that actually I'm adding fun to my business trip by doing so, but it shouldn't be forgotten that this can add some additional challenges to immigration and the processes in which we have to undergo to get where we're going. So some of those challenges could be, for example, I am here within the Schengen area, and whether I'm traveling for business or pleasure, I am actually utilizing my allowable 90 days in my 180-day stay here within Europe, right? And that's something I have to track. I have to remember that these days that I spent as a passenger princess in Andalusia are going to count toward my allowable days. And that could impact my ability to come back here and see my clients again later on. And I am a US-UK dual national. So I didn't need a visa to come here, but so many people do need to get that Schengen C visa in order to make a business trip such as this. And if they want to add some sort of tourism to the end of that trip, it can create some additional complexity to their visa application. For example, when you're traveling for business, your employer is often providing you with hotel accommodation. If I'm going to be adding additional days and I need to make a visa application, I need to evidence things like accommodation, need to evidence things like sufficient funds for my additional days. And that can sometimes be 50 to 100 euro per day, depending on my destination country. So all things to consider when I'm filing my documents. And I want to make sure that I'm providing sufficient documentation. We don't want stealth pleasure, right? We want to be transparent with our intention. We want to make sure that we're providing enough evidence so that our visa that's finally issued will cover the entire duration of intended stay within the Schengen area.
Cool.
Another thing to think about really is travel insurance, because this is where the line between kind of business and leisure can become blurred. So integrating into your travel policy where the responsibilities with travel insurance, for example, duty of care, expenses, of course, all of that should be integrated into your business travel policy so that we can enjoy these types of leisure trips. But we're all aware of where the employer responsibility and the employee responsibility begins and ends.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jen. It's such an important subject for what Pat Jones is saying, used to be known as a boondoggle. Oh, harsh, Pat, harsh. But Jen, thank you so much for that. It's such an important subject, and shout out to everybody at Fragment, and especially everybody at Fragment Nomadic for all the great work that you do in this area. And thank you for standing in for Julie Onslow-Colt. We really, really appreciate it. So we're now going to move on to talk about tax, and there have been some huge tax changes in the UK to what everybody knows as the non-dom regime. So we're going to be talking about that. So everybody, you know how it works. Okay, we're going to say goodbye to Jen, and we're going to welcome Julie Barron and Ash from Vialta. So everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's say a big, big thank you to Jen and a big welcome to Julie and to Ash.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
We've got great numbers today. We've got nearly 350 people watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube. And I'm sure they're all here to learn about non-DOMs, the 4-minute version. So
I think so. I think Ash is going to cover that in 4 minutes flat. And I'm pretty sure that's why all these people are here. So over to you, Ash.
Well, thank you very, very much. And interesting time last week. Before I go on to the non-dom regime, there was another announcement, which was probably the major one, is about that national insurance for employees has been reduced again, second time in not that many months. So you don't have much time to actually make sure that your payrolls adapt to this. It's live from April. So you do need to make sure that your payrolls have that factored in from next month to make sure it's gone down again for employees to 8%. So on to the big one, the non-dom regime. So the government have announced that from the 6th of April 2025, they're going to abolish the current tax regime for non-domiciled individuals. It's going to get replaced with a new remittance-based regime. So what does that mean? Well, broadly speaking, under the old rules, non-domiciled individuals could choose, subject to certain conditions, to be taxed under what was known as a remittance base for up to 15 years. And that meant that non-UK sourced income and gains would not be taxable in the UK so long as they were paid and retained outside of the UK. Now, under these new rules, eligible individuals, which quite frustratingly is still to be fully defined by the government, will not be subject to UK tax on what they're calling foreign income and gains, or FIGs, as we are calling it ourselves, for the first FIGs, yeah, exactly, for the first 4 years of UK tax residence, provided they've not been resident in the UK for the last 10 years prior to their arrival. So essentially, they're removing the concept of domicile here.
Now, basically, anybody who comes to the UK who hasn't been here at any time in the last 10 years, then they're subject to this new regime.
Essentially, yes. These individuals will also be able to bring in their foreign income and gains to the UK, free from additional charges. And similarly, the overseas workday regime, which was in place before, still remains available for these eligible individuals for their first 3 years of tax residence. So any days worked outside of the UK will be not subject to UK taxation. But crucially, and it does seem like common sense has prevailed here, there will no longer be a requirement to retain this income outside of the UK. Now, this was always a big bugbear of mine and others within the industry. You'd want these individuals to spend their money in the UK and contribute to UK PLC. So that has now been removed, that requirement. Like the current regime, individuals who choose to get taxed under this new regime, they will lose their UK personal allowance and capital gains exemption. So that's the quid pro quo you have within this. Now, there are a number of nuances at play here. Given that I probably only have 2 minutes left, I'm not going to have time to go through all the details that happen there. Needless to say, I think this is a huge change for the UK tax regime. Now, there are transitional arrangements in place, which I think a lot of clients need to understand, and a lot of individuals who are currently deemed as non-domiciled need to understand. The first is there will be individuals who have been tax resident in the UK for fewer than 4 years. And there is some transitional arrangements in place for them whereby they will be eligible for a certain period of time. There won't be a cliff edge at this point. There is also the fact that some individuals who, for the 2025-26 tax year, they might not have been eligible for the new regime, but they currently are. They're going to be subject to tax on 50% of their foreign income. 100% of their foreign chargeable gains will end up getting subject to UK tax as well. And then from 26-27 onwards, it just gets into taxed on worldwide income as we go forward. The government have also introduced a temporary repatriation facility, which is in place for 2 years from April 25. And that allows individuals to remit pre-April 25 funds into the UK at a reduced rate of 12%. So they'll only get taxed 12% on that. After the 2 years, though, if you bring in any of that income, you'll get taxed at your marginal rate. So there are still pros and cons with that. Now, obviously,
so I'm going to move you forward in the interest of time. I mean, what we've got here is what I think is probably the biggest change in the taxation of expats into the UK in any of our lifetime, probably the last 200 years, is the biggest change. So my question I want to ask you is two questions, actually. One is, are there planning opportunities? And two, how likely is it that this, given that there's likely to be an election at some point before April 25, how likely is it that this legislation will make it onto the statute book in the form that we see now?
So to answer your first question, there will be opportunities for individuals to structure their affairs to understand what the implications are for these rules. For instance, if you have a lot of offshore income currently, you probably want to have a look at the 12% rate rather than going for your marginal rate later on. In regards to your second question, well, yes, so this was originally a Labour idea. The Conservatives have essentially taken that idea and put it into place. I think most commentators do expect Labour to come into power next. Now, given this was a Labour idea, the non-dom abolition is going to stay in place. I think the question is, what form will the additional nuances take? I can't imagine there'll be a great deal of tweaking because Labour, the Conservatives have done a lot of thinking, but there may be some changes further down the line. And obviously the Conservatives will look to, Conservatives will have or may have a further fiscal event to happen. They may make some changes there, and I can imagine HMRC looking at the detail of this and trying to understand what planning opportunities that there currently are as they come to finalise the rules.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Ash. That's an amazing tour de force update on, as I said, the biggest change in probably over 200 years in 4 minutes. So very, very impressive. Many thanks to you. We're going to move on now. We're going to bring on to stage Cara Butler from Benevo, just give a quick Benevo update, and then we're going to bring on Tricia to talk about transferring mobility at Adobe. So everybody, you know how it works. Let's say a big thank you to Ash and Julie and a welcome to Cara. So please, everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button as we say goodbye to Ash and Julie and welcome onto our stage, Cara Butler. Hey,
hi,
Cara.
Brian.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, tell me things.
Yeah, so it's going to be a busy couple of weeks for us at Benevo over the next few weeks, as I said. But starting tomorrow on Thursday is our quarterly change makers meeting already. It's come again fast. But tomorrow we'll talk about solutions for managing vendor networks, explore some different solutions. And the group is also going to use the time to present Benevo solutions as well. Then on April 25th, we'll be at the GME event, the GME Live event in Dallas. And I'll be joined by Pradeep from Capgemini and Eric Halverson. And we're going to be talking about high tech, high touch, and where that fits into global mobility. And also the last chance to participate in the International Mobility Benchmark Survey that we have out at the moment is approaching. So whoever participates in that will receive priority access to the findings. So I encourage everyone to complete that. And that's about it. I think BAM is coming up. I think we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but yeah.
Okay, well, that's amazing. So what I now want to do is we're going to move on. We're going to bring Tricia onto stage to talk about transforming mobility at Adobe. Now, for those of you who don't know Tricia, for those who do, she is one of the nicest people in our industry and one of the leaders for mobility in the Bay Area. So we're super excited to have Tricia join us on the show, everybody. So you know how it works, everybody. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. A big thank you to Cara and a big, big welcome to the view from the top to Tricia Sirois from Adobe. Tricia, welcome. We have you live on the show. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
You're a global mobility professional. You're a top 100 diversity champion. You're on the board of BAM. I mean, you are a legend. So, and you're hiring, actually. I saw that in the breaking news. Tell us about the job. Let's give that a shout out. Tell us about the job opportunity you've got there.
We are. Thank you so much for using this wonderful platform. We are hiring right now in EMEA. Our London office is looking for our EMEA Senior Global Mobility Specialist. This role will be reporting directly to me. Will essentially be our program manager arm for the EMEA region. There is a ton of activity going on there for us right now. So we are looking for someone awesome. So if you know someone or if you are someone, by all means, please apply.
And they can be based anywhere in EMEA. Is that right?
Actually, no, we do need them in London or our Reading office. So yeah, UK based for this role.
Okay, so if anybody's interested, then reach out to Tricia directly via LinkedIn. And I've been promised a glass of wine or a beer on Tricia if we find somebody. So I've got a vested interest in this too. Anyway, Tricia, it's great to have you on the show. Tell us a bit. Actually, let's give BAM a shout out too, because tell us a bit about BAM and what you do there.
Yeah. So I'm very, very honored to have just been appointed to one of the positions of corporate advisor for BAM, our Bay Area Mobility Management Group. We have our annual event next week, actually next Wednesday. So hopefully a lot of you are already registered and we'll see you there. But if not, there's still time. So by all means, please register if you can. And it's going to be a really great event. Amazing agenda, ton of great speakers. We're doing something a little bit different with the corporate roundtable. So definitely if you've been to an event before or if it'll be your first time, I encourage you to go. It's going to be really, really great and a really good group of people.
Okay. So a lot of people do know you, Trish, and I've been seeing a lot of your sort of, work colleagues and friends and acquaintances have been sort of putting some comments up in our comments box. And I think we've got, virtually 350 people watching us live. But Tricia, for people who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into mobility?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the mobility space for nearly 12 years now. And like a lot of us, I kind of fell into it in this sort of organic I wasn't seeking it out sort of way. So I actually started my career in the talent acquisition space. as a recruiting coordinator. So I have a soft spot in my heart for all you coordinators out there. It is a tough job. But quickly after that, or rather with that role, I was supporting the engineering and IT arm of the organization that I just, happened to be working with. And so I was getting a lot of exposure to immigration just in terms of the hiring process. So, I quickly was having to deal with a lot of H-1Bs and green card related questions. So it was a new area for me at the time. And I was, wanting to learn more about it. Just the complexity seemed so interesting to me. And then my manager at the time also was the manager of our global mobility program manager at this company. This was at McAfee. If any of you are familiar with the, pop-up windows that used to get on your computers way back when. So, our program manager at the time went on maternity leave. And so there was this opportunity for, hey, Tricia, why don't you, you love to learn. Why don't you, raise your hand for this? And I thought, why not? Let me see if I can take this on. So I temporarily took the role of immigration program manager while she was on leave. And then she didn't come back. So it stuck with me. And pretty much from that point forward, I couldn't and didn't want to get away from global mobility. So it was a start in immigration, but quickly kind of moved into relocation, about a year or so after that. And then, here I am, now, like I said, over a decade later at Adobe leading the program.
We all sort of get into it in different ways, but once we're there, it's like the Hotel California, isn't it? We can check out, we can never leave.
Yeah. Well, you either get out really quickly or you stay forever.
Exactly. Anyway, Tricia, tell us about Adobe. We've talked about, or you're going to be talking about transforming mobility at Adobe. But let's just go back. Obviously, there was a reason why you wanted to transform what you had. So what did Adobe have historically?
Sure. Yeah. So I joined Adobe in 2015. Actually, my 9-year anniversary is coming up just this week. So yeah.
Hey, happy anniversary.
I know. Yeah. It's kind of a wild thing to say now. Just 9 years. It's a big chunk of my life. But I mean, clearly, I like doing what I'm doing here. So it's a really awesome place to work. Can't say that enough. But so when I first joined the company, obviously we were an incredibly well-established company and even global mobility program at the time. But I learned very quickly that the guardrails behind our relocation program specifically just weren't quite there. We had a framework for sure. We had, I guess we had a policy document, I would call it. But in terms of the, administration of it and just the efficiency and the consistency of it, that did not exist. So like I said, we had, a written policy to refer to, but ultimately what was happening is every single time we were getting an individual request to move somebody from A to B, it was a start from scratch. Let's create a custom cost estimate that has, all the bells and whistles of everything that we think would be what the best relocation experience could be, having no kind of semblance of what the budget might be, or potentially what this person's personal life might be, their where they are in their career, if they've been living in the same home for 20 years with a family of 5, or if they are a new college grad who's single. We kind of weren't paying attention as much to that as we should have. And we're just blindly saying, here's what we consider the best package for you. And what we thought that was kind of the full blown white glove, $100,000 package. And
it's very traditional.
Very, very traditional. Yes.
Yeah.
And guess what? We got a lot of pushback and a lot of, no, I can't, that's not I don't have that in my budget, or no, this person doesn't need that. And every single time it was this, constant back and forth, at least a few iterations. And that was just on the front end. And then on the back end, that means that everything, that we're negotiating essentially comes out looking different. Everybody was getting something different. Everybody was, getting a different message. It was custom. And so I think that people felt that we were meeting the needs of our customers, but ultimately it was just not scalable.
Okay, let me just ask the audience a question, because clearly what you saw there, when you were looking at the policies at Adobe, were policies that needed change, to put it
big time.
mildly. And the question I want to ask the audience is how would you best describe your own mobility program, or indeed if you're a supplier, that of your largest client. And I'll give you 4 choices. We actually did a survey on this, but I'm interested in people's comments. The first choice is, to be honest, our policies are tired. The second choice is, they're meh. They're okay, but could do better. The third one is, our policies are good or strong. And the last choice is, actually, our policies are market leading. So, the audience, please, in the comments box, tell us what you think about the policies of either your own policies or your client's policies, where you think they are on that spectrum from being tired to market leading. And how would you describe what you had at Adobe before the change?
I think we would probably hover in those kind of somewhere in between the last two, the tired and needs an overhaul, or okay could do better, because of kind of the flexibility of it. Like I said, we kind of were able to quote unquote meet the needs of our customers, rather our transferees is probably the best way to put it. But everything else around it was not working, right? So again, the administration piece of it, at the time I wasn't leading the program. I was, in the specialist role doing this. So I knew how long it took to put together an estimate and to have these negotiations first with the talent partner, then with the manager, and then potentially ultimately, the transferee later on. And it just, it didn't make sense to me that we were doing it this way. And, I think it also coincided very much with, quite an uptick in terms of just overall, Adobe hiring and our, our efforts and priorities to scale. We've been moving, we were moving our subscription from this, box based to the cloud was kind of right when I was joining the company. And so we've been on this, upward trajectory, and scale is so critical. So there were every reason basically, was telling us that we need to do something different here.
Okay, well, we did ask the audience, and this is what we got when we did it on LinkedIn. What we said is that 28% of people said that their policy or their clients' policies were tired. 44% said they were okay. So that's what together it's nearly three quarters. And then 13% said good, and market leading was 16%. So it's interesting that virtually 3/4 of respondents said that their policies were either tired or they could do better. So let's move the conversation on. And the question I would ask is this: we talked about, what Adobe had done historically. What was your business imperative for change? What was the main thing that was sort of driving you to make that change?
I mean, honestly, I think it was a big, kind of coming together of various factors. I think, the high level messaging of scaling had been there for quite some time. So it was something we knew we needed to do. I think just from cost was something that we wanted to look at for sure. I think that, obviously everyone always wants to save money, but I think that because of the way that we were approaching our policy, we saw we had a very clear opportunity to approach that in a way that we could give, create a structure and provide options to people. So that's where we actually started the process prior to me taking over of it, strictly looking at kind of just the numbers of it. And while that was very insightful, it still wasn't telling us necessarily where we wanted to go next, because we hadn't necessarily, gathered as much maybe customer feedback as maybe what I would have liked to. And so, so kind of once I started, getting involved from a more leadership perspective, I really wanted to establish a philosophy. I think that was the thing that we were missing the most, was that not only was, again, there was kind of the structure piece of it that we needed to build, but even just when we talked to a manager or a business partner, they didn't even know kind of, what do we do? What do you mean? What do we do at Adobe with mobility or relocation? Like, what are we trying to achieve here? No one even really knew kind of what that mindset was. And so that's where I wanted to start, is just starting simple to say, what type of move experience do you want to provide to your employee? And
what I like about what you've done, as I understand it, is you've come up with 3 main types of policies, and you've given quite cool, catchy names as well, which makes it a bit easier to understand. They're not called sort of, lump sum or managed budget or anything sort of jargony like that. So tell us about what came out the hopper the other end, the sort of policies that you've come up with.
Yeah. So expectation setting was, like I said, kind of that was one of the driving factors for sure. Because, not only were on the front end, like I said, we were dealing with this kind of, hodgepodge, Frankenstein-like, package that we're putting together. But then on the back end, we were also getting lots of feedback from our employee population saying, I thought I was going to get this because my friend got it, or I heard about this and my letter didn't have it, and all that type of confusion that will always exist. But I think that expectation setting is the most critical way to address that. And so that's what I wanted to do with our policies, was make it crystal clear, not only to our managers who are making the decisions about the policies, but also to the person that was, reading it and about to accept it, as to what type of level of support am I getting? Because my kind of immature early, global mobility career brain used to think that, employee experience was all about kind of, white glove, spending more to, giving more sort of thing. So, the best way to give a good employee experience is to give them all the benefits that we can think of. I, realized through many different facets that is not the case whatsoever. Every single person has different needs and different mindsets. And ultimately, that's what's most critical, is setting the expectation so they know whether they're getting a lump sum or a full blown move, what's going to happen next, and how comfortable do they feel with the planning and, again, their livelihood. I mean, we're talking about moving your, everything personal and your entire life from one place to another. That means a lot. And so we need to make sure that people feel as comfortable as possible in this very kind of scary or exciting, or however you want to look at, situation that is, always a break from the norm. So our policies, we have kind of like the Goldilocks approach, the small, medium, large, but the titles of those policies speak to those directly. So our lump sum is called the Move Yourself policy, really trying to set that expectation up front that you're on your own.
Okay, so the first one, you don't call it lump sum, you just call it Move Yourself.
Yep, Move Yourself, which essentially is our lump sum policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like move yourself, or is it you can move yourself?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, the inflection maybe matters. And actually, by region, the actual policy details do vary. So depending on where you are, it might look a little different. But that's the whole thing. The mindset is still the same. Is that when I'm either offering this policy as a manager or receiving this policy as an employee, that's the expectation of, I'm going to have to be making, some investment in planning and potentially even money into this.
So give me an idea. I appreciate it varies, and obviously there's confidentiality. So, but just give me, to the extent you can, a rough idea. What does Move Yourself tend to involve?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, we've got different facets of it. And so some of them include a lump sum option that there's a little bit of, flexibility. There are options there for managers to pick from. We also want to, educate them. We've kind of capped those at the pieces where, a manager can't say, oh, here's 50K, and just give a, lump sum with no regard, because if you're needing to give that much money, it sounds like that person needs more help and therefore would probably need some more services. So that's part of it too, is that we want people to, I think some companies approach relocation in the sense of we want to treat everyone equally. And there's value in that for sure. I definitely don't disagree with that approach if that aligns to your culture. But that is not our approach and not intending to be our approach at Adobe. We know for a fact that every single person has different needs and wants. And I have heard from candidates' mouths like, I don't need any support. I want to join Adobe and I'm going to make that happen. To the other end of the spectrum, which is, I want everything. So why would I prescribe that to a manager's budget when that manager is, again, it's their employee and they're providing not only a compensation package, but a move experience to, attract and onboard this individual. So as long as we can educate the manager appropriately, then we empower them to make that decision. So then if we've kind of, once we've gotten past either it's a lump sum, and actually in some areas, it could even just be travel. So like I said, it does vary. But then if we start, getting into some higher needs, then we move into the Adobe Assists, what we call the Adobe Assist policy. And
well, that's like level 2. So level 1, if you like, is Move Yourself. Level 2 is Adobe Assist. So what is Adobe Assist?
So Adobe Assists is, again, exactly that, which is we are going to assist you with the key components of your move. So we really try to cover all the core components, or what we consider the core components of what a move would entail. So, that final move travel, temporary living in certain locations. Destination services are a huge benefit. I think is highly valuable and something I try to implement across all of even our lump sum policies, because it's just such a critical benefit in my opinion. But with the Adobe Assist package, we also start getting into some of our cash out flexibility, and we have that option for both our Adobe Assist and then our higher tier package, which I'll speak to in a second. But that in itself lends to this additional empowerment and flexibility that we were also trying to achieve. Again, we had kind of multi-level goals when we were trying to roll this out, and so that is a big piece of it. So for example, temporary living. If temporary living is a benefit that's included in this region, then that is something that's available for cash out. And the reason why we made
is that, like, I mean, if I take traditional terms, if Move Yourself is like Sun, is Adobe Assist more like Core Flex?
Yes and no. So it's not a traditional Core Flex, because we are not giving people, the core options and then the traditional, here's what you get and here's what you can choose from, right? What we're doing is we're saying, here's what you get. Essentially, it's all core, if you think about it that way. But within these core benefits, we have the cash out on certain benefits. So we actually line by line will say, and the vast majority of our benefits are use it or lose it. Because we feel that, again, in certain circumstances, if this is something you need, like destination services, if you need on the ground support, we want to make sure you have it. If you're familiar with the area, okay, great. That's really awesome that you don't need that, but there's no reason necessarily why we would want to pay you for not needing that benefit. Whereas I view like temporary living as a great example, because, we got common requests for, oh, I need first month's rent instead of, temporary living. I already found a place to live. I really don't want to, after a while, I didn't want to deal with that exception anymore, to be honest, because ultimately it's very similar. From a philosophical standpoint, everyone's kind of getting what they want. And as long as we work the numbers in a way to make sure that we're not, overspending, then why wouldn't we accommodate something like that easily? And then it makes it something. So, again, the employee doesn't necessarily need to have to negotiate about it. And then my team doesn't have to go through the time and effort to review and approve an exception. So that's where the cash out came in. Is that to say, I don't want to deal with that type of, conversation, because again, people are, adults, and we want them to be making informed decisions. But that's also why we structured the policies in this way of, here's what you get, but you have this option, because what we didn't want to do was, for example, give that power to the manager or decide, or even to us to decide for them, because we wanted to educate the transferee. We actually want them to have that conversation with our RMC consultant to know what these benefits are and exactly how they might play out. And again, the pros and the cons and all the things, because sometimes reading it on paper is a little bit different. And especially if you see a little bright, flashy cash number, you might think, ooh, that sounds really good. Let me just do that. But, we want them to really make an informed decision. So only after they've been educated by our RMC about exactly kind of what the benefit is and then what the cash out might look like, will we allow them to make that decision.
Okay, so we've got level 1 is Move Yourself. Level 2 is Adobe Assists,
Yep.
which is like a core with a bit of cash out.
Yeah.
In there. Yeah, got that. And then level 3 is Adobe Assist. So tell us about level 3, and that's the top level.
Yeah, so our level 3, or the highest tier that we've got, is what we call Adobe Moves You. So again, I was trying to prescribe what this experience would be, and again, I'm thinking for this level, this is really reserved for key talent and executives and the people that we want to provide that white glove experience to. So that's kind of how I again explain it and sell it to our internal partners as. If you really want to roll out the red carpet for this person and make sure that they're set up for success, this is the way to do it. And Adobe is going to move you. And really the point of that one is to cover, nearly all aspects of the move that we can within policy.
Okay. So let's just try and get a feel for it. I mean, you've got a demographic. I mean, how many people is Adobe moving in a typical year, and how do they split between the 3 categories? And indeed, how do you decide who fits in which of those 3 categories?
Yeah, good question. So admittedly, our numbers are a little bit, not unstable, but again, the last few years have been different. So I'm going to say that I would maybe say average of about 400 moves per year is probably a good estimate for us. And those are our one-way moves or permanent moves. We also have a, intern and assignment population I wouldn't include in that. And so actually, I will call that as well. We do have a carve out for our university program. We do have a standard kind of offering for them. So that is the one kind of population where it's, like I said, standardized across the board and there's no real manager choice because it's a different type of program, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects for that. That's standard. But for all of our experienced hires, it is, again, it's up to the manager because we are telling this manager, what is this move experience that you want to provide to your employee? Not all companies have, BU manager budgets. Sometimes there's a centralized budget, which, there's pros and cons to that. And I know that, so that would, that's a facet I think that you would need to consider if you're looking at something like this, because I think a big piece of why our our approach works is because it is a manager choice and budget and decision. So that's just something to keep in mind. But when we but as we've been looking at the numbers for the last few years, and again, it's been a little bit different or the patterns haven't been normal or the behaviors haven't been normal. But we've been seeing actually, our lump sum policies are wildly popular for sure. They are, we kind of anticipated that was something that our customers were wanting just from the feedback we got previously. But, kind of the data tells us that, affirms that truly is the case. We also see, I think that's probably our most popular policy. And then our second most popular policy is the Adobe Assist policy, which is also used quite frequently. I would say more so in the US than any of our other locations, but a good solid maybe chunk third or so there. And then naturally, I think our smallest number is the Adobe Moves You, which I would expect, to be honest, again, because it is reserved for key talent and executives, which just from a percentage standpoint is not the majority of our hiring.
Let me take a couple of questions from the audience, if I may, Tricia. So here's one from Jacqueline Van Haften. She said, Tricia, how can expats and their partners know what they need when they've never moved abroad? I think
good question.
Jacqueline probably is thinking about the first policy, the move yourself policy at that point.
Yes, no, that is a really great question. So that's part of this is, there's, I think, two aspects of this. First is that consultation with the relocation company or the consultant. So we want to make sure that they, know what they're getting. I mean, at that point, it's a little bit, they've already been authorized and approved for something. So it might be a little bit too late, but I guess in terms of if we're talking about like the cash out piece of it, for example, that's exactly what that consultation is for, is to make sure, here's what this benefit is, here's what it could mean for you. Now, what do you want to do? And that education piece is critical. On the front end though, so one of the resources that I provided or that we created in connection with this policy rollout was calculator is a really strong word, but I call it a policy calculator, where it's essentially a five question quiz, if you will, for managers to help them just navigate, where do I start? Because that's the piece, especially if you've never done this before, kind of like what's typical, where do I go? And my answer to that is typical should not be really what you necessarily need to look at because of the individual needs of everybody. I want to look at what this person's situation is. So that's one of the questions. Have you moved to another country or to this country before? Did you apply for this role or did we headhunt you, right? Like those motivation factors are really important. And so depending on kind of how you answer those questions, I'm going to recommend a higher tier policy for you.
Okay, I've got a few more questions that have come in. So let me just take these. This question is from Pretty. She says, Adobe Assists, or take it or cash it. She's renamed your policy. Out of the box policy. With cash out, there's always a question of employee experience. How is that going?
Yes,
so how's the employee experience element? Yeah.
This is a wonderful question because that's, this is part of the fear, right? Of like, okay, if we give them this, let loose kind of option, what's going to happen? And so we've seen a few things, honestly. And part of this is, and it's still this is still an ongoing process, of course, right? I think just in the last year or so, we're starting to get that kind of like what I'm calling normalized data and patterns, if you will, but it's still been really helpful to see. So, so again, the consultation piece of it, we really want to make sure that people aren't getting excited about, because we do put the numbers in the policy themselves, right? We don't, you know, they don't have to ask for it per se. It's very transparent in that sense. So again, we don't want them just to look at that and take it without thinking. We've had only one instance, and this is, again, we kind of anticipated this but I'm very pleased to see that we've actually only had one instance of this in the 4 years that we've been doing this, is the example of somebody cashed out their temp living. They went on their own to find, you know, whatever housing that they needed to. They got scammed. They came back to us and they needed help. Now, you know, from a policy standpoint, we already said, if you cash out, you're on your own, right? So we already kind of put that warning out there, because ultimately that is part of the administrative efficiency, is that it's something that we're, you know, getting out of, and you know, there you go. But ultimately we are, you know, we love our employees and we're a good partner. So we did obviously end up helping this person in navigating their tough situation. So it's honestly, it's only come up once so far, which like I said, I was a little bit surprised it didn't come up more often. On the flip side, though, I was also, in reviewing our numbers, I've noticed that we have some lower satisfaction scores tied to international move yourself policies, which already makes sense as I read like that statement line. I'm like, yeah, I could see that probably not providing as good of an experience. And so that's something that, again, as we go through this exercise of analyzing kind of the results of these changes, that's something that we want to focus on in terms of, it does look to be like a regional kind of issue or whatever, to train up that group of talent partners and managers to say, hey, you can do this. This is still an option for you, but the data is telling us that your people maybe need more support. So I want you to consider this higher tier policy maybe moving forward.
We've got a few other questions. So in the interest of fairness to all our viewers, can we do some like 30-second answers to some of these questions as we get through? I've got a fear. I've got a fear we won't get through all of them, but let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Amanda, do you provide tax assistance to educate where one benefit may not attract tax, but if they take a cash out instead and tax may apply? Do you educate that as part of the discussion?
We gross up, so they don't have to worry about it.
That is the next question, actually. So I've said, do you support growth up on cash benefits?
Yes, done.
Yes. Hey, we've got 2 questions there for the price of one. So the next question that's come through is, how do you guide the decision from the managers in terms of which policy they go on? Do you have parameters? Some managers may consider all their hires are exceptional and thus would want to offer a more robust policy. Do you use job grades? So how do you decide who gets what?
Yeah, so this is part of, definitely a big piece of this is education. So the policy calculator is one way of that. I have several resources, again, explaining the philosophy and the intent of what these policies are. It's pretty easy with the names of them. So it's just kind of more double clicking into each of those. But really, again, the key line and question to the manager, what move experience do you want to provide to this employee, is something that we always come back to. Where we do have a job grade kind of component. So for the move yourself, again, it's a move yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. The Adobe Assists, again, we explain what it's intended for. You can use it if you want to. Once you get to the Adobe Moves You version of it, we have tiers based on level. So if you're an IC versus a VP, those policies do, or the details of those policies do look different. There's probably, I don't think there's additional benefits. It's the same exact, list of benefits, but maybe like the duration would be longer or the amounts might be bigger, sort of thing. But that is certainly where we differentiate, because honestly, if we do have somebody kind of in that key talent bucket, we do want to make sure that we are providing, the right level of service based on their job level.
Okay, there's a question from Javier. He says, when you say that the hiring manager decides what type of experience they want to provide to their new hire, does the new hire get to decide on Move Yourself versus Adobe Assist prior to hiring or after they are hired?
No, yeah. So the employee, the manager decides what to offer, and then the employee would accept it as part of their offer. So it would be, before relocating and joining. But that's kind of where this whole cash out component kind of helps out, kind of closing that gap. Because let's say we've seen this happen too. The manager says, okay, I want to make sure I cover off these key aspects of a move and make sure they're set up for success, moving their goods, temporary living, the travel, right? Again, nothing is fluffy here. And if the employee sees that and goes, yeah, actually I can do this all, these 3 things on my own, they get the cash. No one has to have a conversation about it. And Adobe actually saves the money.
Cool. Okay. And then a quick question here. And I want to get back to some of my own questions. This is from, it says LinkedIn News, but I'm seeing it's actually Heidi Cudney. And she says, are these tiers only for perm transfers or for traditional LTA, STA global assignments?
Yes, this is definitely a perm transfer thing. I would not recommend this approach for transfer or for assignments.
Okay, so we've only got a few minutes left. What I do want to do is say you've done this transformation, and kudos to you for this huge transformation you've done. Results, how's it gone? How's it been?
Things are going well. Things have been incredibly positive, honestly. So we were measuring on several different factors. But again, so close to my heart, my own team, I really, really wanted to get their time back, to get them out of the weeds, to get that administrative efficiency. We reduced the time of our cost estimates by 75% with this policy approach. We went from about 20 minutes or so in negotiations and back and forth and frustration to a quick kind of 5-minute output that we can very quickly and easily provide exactly what people are looking for. What I am most proud of is that we can clearly articulate a clear mobility philosophy and set expectations accordingly. Again, that expectation setting is by far the number one thing I would recommend focusing on, because you can kind of, again, you've seen what I've done. You can kind of make your own version of what that is based on your own culture and based on your own expectations of your talent acquisition team and your leadership. But again, what I'd love to see is that managers are empowered to provide the move experience they want, and then transferees are empowered to, again, cash out potentially some designated benefits after being educated. We've also reduced exceptions dramatically. So again, this was administrative efficiency was key. But for example, we saw an 82% decrease in additional benefit exception requests, a 71% decrease in extensions and increased requests. So we could tell very clearly that things were working well and employees were getting again, we were setting the expectations and then they were navigating within those bounds. We've also seen reduced administrative errors because our consultants, on the RMC side actually know what our offerings are versus, them having to kind of start from scratch every single time. So that in itself has solved a lot there. And then ultimately the dollar savings, you could see it just from the amount of lump sum policies that we're authorizing and the amount of cash out and how popular that's become. Again, we structured it in a way that cash out always, for the most part, means savings to the business. And again, it's a win-win because the employee is, again, making a decision, but the company gets to kind of save a few bucks in the end of the day.
Okay. One last question from me, which is a slightly cheeky one, but I shall ask it anyway, is people are loving what you've done here and loving what you said, the thinking behind it, the philosophy behind it. If there's other companies going through something similar, they wanted to reach out and pick your brains, would that be okay for them to reach out to you? And
yes, absolutely. By all means. I will admit I am not the best at monitoring my LinkedIn inbox. So honestly, probably the best way to get in touch with me is reaching out to me directly at my Adobe email address. So I'm happy to share that in some sort of capacity. But you can try me on LinkedIn. I promise I won't ignore you intentionally.
Or they can just see you at BAM.
Yes, even better. Yes, come see me at BAM next week.
Let's go to BAM, everybody.
Exactly. But yes, no, I as you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. I'm super passionate about it. And so, yeah, by all means, I'm happy to help anybody I can.
We are pretty much out of time. I'm just going to bring our other guests back onto stage. Here's Julia, who's Cara. Here's our producer, Tally. And here is Jen.
Oh.
Here, that's great. We are
Jen's leisuring.
It's pleasuring.
Jen is pleasuring. It's a bit noisy in Barcelona at the moment. It doesn't matter. We're out of time. We've done our hour. It's been fantastic having you all on the show. Thank you to all our wonderful guests for taking part in the show. Thank you to everybody in the audience. We had record numbers today. We had, I think, about 350 people watching us, which was just fantastic. Great show. We are back again this time next week. And again, that funny time difference will still apply to those of you in the US. But we are back same time next week to be talking about comp accumulation and payroll reporting, two really important subjects, not necessarily always the most exciting subject, but certainly the most important subject. So thank you to everybody. This is The View from the Top. I'm Brian Friedman, and see you all again this time next week. Take care, everybody, and have a great week.
Bye.